It began like the kind of report nobody wants to write twice. A private hospice outside town. Quiet work, simple nights. The kind of place where the hall lights never fully turn off. Because darkness feels rude when people are trying to leave this world gently. I was there because the security contractor had refused to renew. No incident, no theft, no threats. Just a man who turned in his badge and said he didn't want to stand next to doors that open inward. On my first night, the building felt too clean. Too still. The air carried the soft chemical smell of disinfectant mixed with old flowers. Every sound echoed and then died, as if the walls swallowed it. At 1:17 a.m., the camera feed glitched. It's not a blackout. Just a smear of gray for half a second, like someone breathed on the lens from inside the screen. When the image returned, the end of Corridor C was wrong. Everything looked the same, except the far door. Room C12 was open, even though it had been sealed for months after a death the staff politely called complicated. The door stood open just enough to show a slice of darkness. Not the normal darkness of a room with lights off. This felt thicker, heavier, like a shadow with weight. I told myself it was a nurse. I picked up my flashlight and walked the hall. The carpet muted my steps. The air cooled, and a strange smell followed me: warm soup, stale breath, and metal, like pennies held too long. Room C12 was open exactly as it appeared on the camera. When the door finally gave way, my flashlight beam slid across the room and stopped at the bed. The bed was perfectly made, tight corners, fresh sheets. And resting at the center was a manila folder, stamped closed in red ink. The folder wasn't generic, was the same kind used for incident reports. When I leaned closer, I saw the label. It had my name on it. Inside was a photograph, Keeney pulled from security footage. It showed a hallway like this one, and in the center of the frame was me, walking toward the camera. Behind where the hallway should have been empty was something darker than shadow, a gap where the world seemed unfinished. Then the call bells rang. One, then another, then a third. Perfectly spaced, fading at the same speed, like the sound had been rehearsed. The hallway lights flickered once, softly, like the building took a slow breath. Later, in the security office, the cameras showed Corridor C empty again. Room C12 was closed, but in the reflection on the monitor glass, something stood behind where I was sitting. At 3:33 a.m., the printer activated on its own. One page slid out. A single word typed in clean black ink. Next. That was the first time I understood what the investigators meant. Some files don't get closed, just get passed to whoever is still awake. I didn't believe the second file at first, and that's what made it worse. It came from a stretch of rural highway officially listed as uneventful. No sharp curves, no warnings, no notable deaths. Just a long, empty road cutting through farmland where radio signals fade and the sky feels far too big. Truck drivers had complained for years, not about accidents, but about distance. They swore there was a single mile that took too long to pass. GPS trackers later confirmed it. Every vehicle lost exactly 60 seconds near mile marker 117, leaving a clean, silent gap in the data. I drove the road myself just before dawn. The painted lines were fading. The air smelled of wet dirt and cold grass. And everything felt calm as I approached marker 116. The radio crackled once and went dead. Nothing unusual until the silence that followed swallowed every sound. I passed marker 117 and nothing happened. No jolt, no distortion. But the road ahead felt wrong. The same fence posts repeated endlessly. My speedometer read 60. Yet my body knew I wasn't moving the way I should have been. That's when I noticed the smell, old upholstery, dust, and something faintly sweet, like flowers left too long in a closed car. The passenger seat was empty, yet the space beside me felt occupied. as if I'd forgotten something obvious until that moment. Time stopped making sense. The dashboard clock froze at 5:12 a.m. The sun refused to move, and the road no longer felt like a place you passed through, but a place you stayed inside. The air felt compressed, heavy with attention. As the road finally curved and marker 118 appeared ahead, the pressure eased. The radio snapped back mid-sentence. The engine grew louder, and daylight returned by a shade. When I looked again, the seat beside me was empty, though the scent still lingered. Later, the file confirmed the pattern. Every investigator saw the same thing when they drove alone. The final note was underlined in red. He only appears to those who slow down. And even now, when I pass mile 117, I never speed because something still listens to my breathing, waiting. The third file was thinner than the others, and that alone felt wrong. Hospitals are built on paperwork, forms multiplying endlessly like heat in a closed body. When a file is thin, it usually means someone worked hard to keep it that way. The file came from a pediatric wing closed for renovation nearly a year earlier. Officially, the building was empty. Unofficially, night janitors kept quitting after only a few shifts, each one offering a different excuse that somehow felt like the same truth. I was called in because a motion sensor had been triggering every night at exactly 2:11 a.m., not randomly, not occasionally, okay? Always the same minute, as if something inside the building was keeping time. The hospital administrator walked me to the wing himself, smiling too often, joking too much. The doors were locked, the lights were off. And the air smelled stale. Old antiseptic mixed with something faintly organic, like forgotten toys in a damp basement. At 2:09 a.m., the security monitors showed long, empty corridors. Small doors painted with cartoon animals. Murals of clouds and smiling suns curling away from the walls, as if the building itself was tired of pretending. At 2:11, every camera flickered at once, not off, just dimmer. Then the hallway lights came on softly, one by one, starting at the far end of the corridor and moving closer, as if something unseen was walking forward. Inside the wing, the silence felt wrong. No machines. No distant carts. Only the hum of old wiring and the faint ticking of cooling metal. My footsteps sounded too loud, like the building was listening to each one. Near the old playroom, the drawings on the walls had changed. Crayon figures layered over each other. Stick people with oversized heads. Some smiling, some not. Kamini with their eyes scribbled out. Every date stopped at the same month, the month the wing closed. The playroom door stood ajar. Inside, toys were arranged in a perfect circle on the floor. Plastic blocks, stuffed animals. A small metal chair lay tipped on its side, rocking gently as if someone had just stood up. I froze in the doorway as the chair stopped moving. Then I heard breathing, slow, patient, and close, not coming from the room, coming from behind me. When I turned, the hallway was empty, but every light behind me was off, as if darkness itself had followed me forward. The radio crackled with static, and beneath it, small footsteps padded softly across cold tile. The toys scattered across the floor as the room filled with a heavy, invisible presence. Images flooded my mind. Hospital beds, four-poles, ceiling tiles counted endlessly. Promises whispered to children who never left. In the silence, a voice formed without sound, without words. You said you'd come back. It wasn't angry. It was hurt. I fled the wing and later watched the footage. The camera showed nothing, no movement, no figures. Only a single detail at 2:11 a.m., a second reflection in the glass, short, close, and looking up. The pediatric wing was demolished months later. The alarms stopped. But when the new building's lights flicker at night, nurses still hear small footsteps and a quiet voice asking if anyone remembered to come back. The fourth file didn't come from a place. It came from a house. A single-story home at the edge of a quiet subdivision. The kind of neighborhood where nothing ever happens, and that's the point. No crime history, no deaths on record. No reason for anyone to feel afraid. Except the owner stopped sleeping. Not because of noises, not because of dreams, because of messages. The house belonged to a widower who lived alone. Late 50s, organized, methodical, the type of man who labeled storage boxes and kept old receipts in envelopes marked by year. When he reported the issue, he sounded embarrassed, like he was confessing to something childish. His answering machine kept filling up. Not with wrong numbers, not with silence. With his own voice. I listened to the recordings in the file before I ever visited the house. The first few were harmless. Mundane. A man leaving himself reminders. Pick up milk, call the bank. Don't forget trash day. The timestamps were wrong. They were all logged between 2 o'clock and 2:30 a.m. The man insisted he slept through the night. He lived alone. The machine sat on a small table by the front door. He didn't sleepwalk. He didn't drink. Then the messages changed. The voice was still his but strained, breathing heavier. Words coming slower, as if chosen carefully. I heard it again. I think it knows I'm awake. Please stop calling. That last message ended with a sound the report described as fabric moving close to the microphone. I went to the house on a Tuesday evening. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the neatly trimmed lawn. Wind chimes hung on the porch, unmoving despite the breeze. Inside, the air felt stale, like the house had been holding its breath. The answering machine was exactly where the photos showed it. Beige plastic. Red light blinking calmly. One new message. His voice filled the hallway. I'm standing by the door now. It's on the other side. The homeowner's face went pale. He said he wasn't home yesterday. He had been at his sister's. No one else had a key. That night, I stayed in the house. I sat in the living room with the lights off. The answering machine sat in the dark, its red light the only steady thing in the room. At 2:07 a.m., it clicked. Not the beep of a message ending, the click of a button being pressed. At 2:08, I heard breathing through the speaker, faint and uneven. A new message played. My own voice spoke calmly. I'm inside now. I checked every door and window, all locked. The house was exactly as it should be. Yet the feeling of being watched grew heavier. At 2:14 a.m., the machine clicked again. The message was short. Don't turn around. I didn't. I stared at the wall as the silence stretched thin. The red light stopped blinking. No more messages came that night. I left before dawn. The homeowner moved out 2 days later, leaving the answering machine behind. The file said the machine was destroyed, crushed, burned, rendered unusable. Still, 6 weeks later, the manufacturer received a voicemail from a disconnected line. You forgot to say goodbye, okay? And that was the last time anyone tried to erase file 4. The fifth file came from a psychiatric facility on the outskirts of the city. Modern, well-funded, built with glass walls and soft lighting meant to make suffering feel controlled. Everything about the place looked calm on the surface, like nothing inside was ever supposed to break. The problem began in Observation Room 3, a small, padded space with a reinforced door and a one-way mirror facing the monitoring booth. It was designed to have no blind spots, no sharp edges, no surprises. At least, that's what the blueprints claimed. The first report came from a night psychiatrist reviewing routine logs. For exactly 30 seconds, the patient's heart rate spiked sharply, then returned to normal. No movement, no sound, just a sudden change, followed by silence. When asked what happened, the patient said only one thing. Someone stood where you're standing. The psychiatrist laughed it off until the same spike appeared again days later. Different patient, same room, same 30 seconds. This time, the patient cried afterward, curled into the corner and whispered that the glass had gone dark. That was when I was called in to observe the room myself. Observation room 3 looked identical to every other room. Clean, neutral, forgettable, through the mirror. The empty bed and padded walls reflected perfectly. My own reflection hovered faintly in the glass, barely visible. At exactly 2 a.m., the reflection sharpened. The room beyond the glass seemed to sink backward, as if depth itself had changed. The reflection remained where it was, standing straight, facing the bed. The light snapped back to normal, and everything looked ordinary again. Later, the footage showed nothing unusual. No second figure. No distortion. But on the fourth review, one detail appeared at the exact moment the spike occurred. At 2 a.m., my reflection blinked. I hadn't. The room was shut down a week later. Months after that, other patients began reacting to mirrors too, but only the ones who stayed still long enough. Some reflections, the file concluded, are not copies. They are rehearsals. The sixth file was marked resolved. The word was underlined twice, as if someone needed to believe it. It came from a downtown hospital built in layers, where new wings were stacked onto old ones and corridors were stitched together by renovations no one fully remembered. Maps were updated constantly, yet there were places staff avoided without ever agreeing why. One of those places was Stairwell D. It was an emergency stairwell meant only for evacuations. Concrete walls. Metal railings. No windows, no decoration. Just gray steps spiraling downward into the lower levels of the building, untouched by time or comfort. Nurses avoided Stairwell D at night, not because anything had happened, at least not at first, but because anyone who used it after midnight always arrived one floor lower than they should have. Security logs showed the same pattern again and again. Entry on level 6. Exit on level 4. Never level 5. The missing floor didn't exist on any blueprint. I was brought in after a resident doctor used the stairwell during a power test and didn't return for 47 minutes. When he finally emerged, he was barefoot, shaking, and missing his ID badge. He kept repeating the same sentence over and over. It kept asking me to follow it. I entered Stairwell D at 12:58 a.m. The door closed behind me with a heavy, spinal sound that echoed longer than it should have. My flashlight swept across rough concrete walls stained by decades of use. The air smelled faintly of rust and old water as I began to descend. My footsteps echoed downward, each sound returning a fraction too late, like the noise had taken a longer path back to me. At the landing marked level 5, there was no door, just a blank wall. I stood there longer than I meant to, staring at the painted number, feeling a subtle pressure behind my eyes as if the space itself wanted to be acknowledged. Then I heard it. Footsteps below me, slow, measured, matching my pace exactly. I didn't call out. I continued down. At level 4, the door was open. Fluorescent lights spilled out, familiar and reassuring. I stepped through and found myself back at level 6. The same door, the same scuffed floor. My heart pounded as I checked my watch. 12:59 a.m., 1 minute had passed. I entered again, this time counting my steps. At the 12th step below level 5, the air changed. Cooler, thicker. My breathing felt trapped in my chest. The footsteps returned. Closer now. I stopped. They stopped. I took one step down. They took one up. I could hear the scrape of a shoe on concrete. Someone was below me. Someone who knew how to climb without being seen. At what should have been level 3, the stairwell widened into a landing that didn't belong. No markings, no doors. Just concrete stretching into dimness. I knew without knowing how that if something there turned around, I wouldn't recognize myself afterward. The lights flickered once. I ran. I don't remember how many steps I took. The stairwell tightened around me, walls inching closer, numbers blurring as I passed them. I burst through a door and collapsed onto polished tile. Level 6. My watch read 1:46 a.m. 48 minutes had passed. Security footage showed me entering stairwell D. It never showed me leaving. The stairwell was sealed that morning. Doors welded shut. Signs removed, maps updated. Officially, it no longer exists. But late at night, when the hospital is quiet, staff still hear footsteps behind the walls, one step below, waiting for someone to miss it. The 7th file was never supposed to be opened. There was no incident number, no official header. Just a plain folder sealed with a strip of tape and a handwritten warning. Do not assign. That alone was enough to suggest this case was not meant to end. The file came from a municipal records building downtown. A forgettable place filled with paper, computers, and fluorescent lights. The kind of building that feels alive during the day, but turns hollow and watchful once night settles in. The problem centered on a single desk, the last one in the archive room, closest to the emergency exit. It belonged to the night clerk, the only employee in the building after midnight. No one kept that job longer than 3 weeks. Badge logs showed 2 entries every night. One at 11:58 p.m., another at exactly midnight. Cameras showed nothing unusual. But at 12:01 a.m., the chair at that desk always rolled back slightly, as if someone had just sat down. When I took the night shift myself, the archive room felt narrow and stale. The desk was spotless. Too spotless. No mug, no photos, no personal trice only, a terminal, a keyboard, and a time card reader fixed in place. At 11:58 p.m., the badge reader beeped green. I hadn't moved. At midnight, it beeped again. This time, the chair beside me rolled back an inch. Then came the sound of typing from the desk no one ever personalized. The screen flickered and opened a new file by itself. No title, just words appearing slowly, as if typed by unseen hands. You're early. That's okay. It gets lonely when they stop coming back. In that moment, I understood what the desk was. It's not haunted, but occupied. A place where forgotten shifts accumulated, waiting for someone new to sit down and learn the routine. The building replaced night clerks with automation soon after. Yet the badge reader still logs 2 entries every night. And sometimes, after midnight, the sound of typing echoes softly, waiting for the next person to finish the shift.